How's it going? Welcome to the penultimate week of the semester, the second to last. We're wrapping things up. Particularly in this class. So this week, sort of looking at 21st contemporary Japan, which, a lot of things have happened. I tried to kind of sort of summarize sort of Japan, the state of Japan today, as it is kind of within Japan and on a global scale. Some of the highlights, main figures of Japan, arts and culture wise, but also some issues facing Japan. I mean, I think one theme that we've sort of talked about throughout the semester is this idea of tradition and modernity, which isn't just a Japanese issue. It's a lot of societies face that. A lot of cultures. What do we perpetuate? How do we perpetuate that? And Japan has found unique ways to do that. Particularly like anime and manga, using a lot of traditional themes, sorts of arts, and retelling them in new ways, which I think is great. Fashion as well, utilizing traditional modes of fashion and recreating those. So the lectures kind of talk about that. The first one is a little more sort of historical stuff, geopolitical. I think I talk about some issues. Is like workplace is one that's kind of a main kind of being discussed a lot now. Sort of the Japanese traditional live for work versus like this work-life balance. I think there's particularly like my generation. I mean, I guess my in-laws who are all my age have kids, right? We're kind of like there is this sort of switchback of pushback to like only doing working 12, 14 hours a day to spending time with your family. And even internal family dynamics, the roles of gender roles, not just Japan, but the earlier generations, men basically worked, women stayed home. That's kind of changing too. Men are taking a much more active role in parenting. So that's it. And similarly, women are taking a more active role in public. A lot of people, women politicians and workers, right? So these kind of dynamics are a little bit changing, which is, some things are coming out of that. One thing that in Japan is an issue is sort of declining populations. But again, I think people will be able to rectify that. One area is immigration. More people can move to Japan. But that comes up with cultural things like Uchi and Soto's inner and outer stuff, which, it's getting worked through. That's a 21st century Japan. Go there, check it out. You can see for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. I guess the two big things I just picked out two of people that I think are interesting, contemporary Japan artist, Yayoi Kusuma, who I think is very interesting artist, very influential on a global scale. Kind of came up in the 20th century, but still is around making art today in the 21st century. And then also Murakami as well, as the author that I've read a lot of, one of my favorite authors. Read a lot of his works. I think they're very interesting. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to, but I did give a short story, which I think encapsulates Murakami's writing style. Sort of this really surrealism, but with a lot of symbolism, and the setting is sort of the ordinary Japan, but he's very good at bringing in a lot of, plays a lot with, Japanese folklore and stories that and weaves those in there. So the short story I think is really interesting. Have a read of it. I'll give you a little taste of that. I think that's about it. Yeah, so that's it for this week. Just kind of contemporary Japan. Again, I encourage anyone and everyone to go to Japan. You can check it out. Hopefully now armed with a little more ideas of different history, a little bit more history, a little more culture of Japan as well, which is what the discussion post for this week is. It's extra credit. So if you want to do it, you can. Kind of based on the KAO framework that we're implementing here at Hawaii Community College. Again, the idea is that that your time at Hawaii Community College is part of your story. Longer story. Hopefully, years from now, you'll look back and say, "Yeah, it was a really positive moment going and helped get you where you want to go." But then each semester, each course has its own KAO, its own story as well. That's kind of what I want you to be thinking about here. In 2 weeks, the whole we're going to be done. The whole Kai is going to be over. But that doesn't mean this information needs to go. You can hopefully you will have it and perpetuate it. That you'll have this hyena, right? This declaration, reflection. So if you want to, just kind of go back. What have you learned about Japanese culture this semester? Not only what you've learned, but what can you take with you, right? That knowledge. I mean, knowledge is important, and it's important to perpetuate it, right? That's what culture kind of is too. When we talked about what is culture at the beginning of the semester, a lot of people said, "Oh yeah, perpetuating it." Same with knowledge. I mean, now you've learned. I have some ideas and knowledge about Japan. I've shared them with you, and hopefully now you can then share them further on, pass that on to other people, which is exactly what learning is all about. Right? Knowledge is useless if it's just contained in a little box. So, yeah, I think that's it. So, yeah, for if you want to write up a little summary of what you've learned, feel free. The hyena of the Kahao. So that's that. I think that's everything I got. Oh yeah, and I also put up some guidelines, reposted the guidelines for your final projects. Hopefully you're still working on those. Those are due a week from Friday. I'll talk about those a little bit more in the midweek check-in next week, as well as your final exam, which again is a little more. It's more of a take-home. Just sort of thinking about Japanese culture. Shouldn't be too difficult. That's it. So enjoy the rest of your week.